This is the trio that did the road trip. The man in the middle is Hugh, my longtime friend and work colleague, and the girl on the right is his daughter Moira. In 1985, at the age of 13, I taught Moira to ski, and that year she skied with us every Saturday and Sunday, from Christmas to Easter. Moira went on to train as a physiotherapist and specialised in the treatment of patients with brain trauma and rose to a senior position in a major Bristol hospital. She bought a house in Bristol. In 2008, she resigned from her job, sold her house and went to Whistler in British Columbia to train as a ski instructress. While under ski instructor training in Whistler, there was a party one evening where she met her ski instructor's brother and went on to marry him in 2010. Hence we have the man on the left, Darren, who is her husband. Moira and Darren now live in Squamish, which is 40 miles from Vancouver and only 37 miles from the ski grounds at Whistler. Her father is quite philosophical about the situation, but secretly I believe that he blames me for losing his daughter to Canada because it was me who taught her to ski. Moira now works as a physiotherapist in Vancouver. The 793-mile-long journey took 4 days, and the route follows river valleys through the Rocky Mountains and the Coast Range. After Kamloops, which lies at 1,130 feet, the road rises to 4,081 feet as it passes over the Coquihalla Pass. The trip was done in May, very early in the season, so there is a lot more snow than there is in the summer, and a lot fewer tourists. The bighorn sheep is the unofficial mascot of the Rocky Mountains. Banff was founded in the 1880s when the Transcontinental Railway passed through the Bow Valley and natural hot springs were discovered on Sulphur Mountain. Banff flies at an altitude of 4,531 feet. Canada's National Park System was founded here in 1887 when the area was declared a reserve. From 4,531 feet in Banff, the road rises to 6,781 feet at the summit of the Bow Pass. The road travels through the Rocky Mountains, where the height of the peaks varies from 10,000 to 13,000 feet. The high peaks and plains of the Rocky Mountains are still home to numerous Indigenous people. You will find reserves for the Bannock, Sioux, Blackfoot, Cow people, Apache, Kootenai, and many more. I think that they have made it quite clear that you should not stop here to get your photograph taken. Columbia Icefield is the largest icefield in the Canadian Rockies and is the source of the Athabasca Glacier. Meltwater from the Columbia Icefield drains into three oceans: the Pacific Ocean, the Arctic Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean at Hudson's Bay. You can walk up to the Athabasca Glacier or pay for the ride in the bus. There is no parking at the Skywalk, so you have to take the bus if you want to savour the experience. People who are prepared to walk on a glass floor have a poor understanding of the fracture mechanics of brittle materials. This was the only bear seen on the trip. David Thompson was shown the Athabasca Pass by a native Indian in 1811. It rises to 5,751 feet and became a major feature of the fur trade route through the Rockies to the Fraser River. It was part of the 2,600-mile-long route of the York Factory Express, which was used by the Hudson Bay Company to move people and paperwork quickly across the country. Mounts Hooker and Brown at the summit of the Athabasca Pass were explored by Norman Colley, the well-known Scottish mountaineer, between 1896 and 1898. Jasper House was a fur trade outpost of the North West Company, established in 1813 and later taken over by the Hudson Bay Company. In 19... This is the modern town of Kamloops. Around the year 1812, the Hudson Bay Company established a fur trading post here. In 1950, their store was in Victoria Street, Kamloops. And they are still here. This is the current Hudson Bay Company store in Kamloops. Kamloops later became a mining town, and it is still. This is the Afton mine at Kamloops, which produces gold, silver and copper. Kamloops is now the place where the Canadian Pacific Railway and the Canadian Northern Railway join together to continue on to Vancouver on the same set of rails. And so we arrive at the place where Moira and Darren now live, Squamish, which nestles beside the Squamish River, just where it enters Howe Sound. We will explore the area a little. Vancouver is a large city with a diverse population of 675,000 people. The first recorded Chinese presence in British Columbia was in 1788, but it was not until 1858, when gold was found on the Fraser River, that the first major migration of Chinese people came to British Columbia. With nearly 100 inches of rain per annum, Vancouver has an umbrella sharing scheme.